Hello and welcome to our webinar today on the important topic of handling domestic violence leave in the workplace. My name is Daly and I am the Managing Director here at MSS, the HR People. As many of you will be aware, the Work-Life Balance and the Miscellaneous Provisions Act introduced various types of leave in 2023. And one of those leaves was domestic violence leave. And although many employers are aware that there's 5 days leave that people are entitled to, there's still a little bit of unsure and a bit uncertain as to exactly what their role is and how to approach that when it comes to somebody coming to them about domestic violence leave and that disclosure being made. So today what we're going to go through with you is we're going to look at a couple of key areas when it comes to handling domestic violence leave in the workplace. First of all, we're going to take you through the legalities and what the legal entitlements are when it comes to the leave. And today, just to introduce who we have with us here. I'll do that now in 2 moments. So we'll take you through the legalities, first of all, in terms of exactly what are the legal entitlements when it comes to handling domestic violence leave. We're going to look at what are the signs that you should look out for as an employer in the workplace concerning domestic violence. How can you navigate those conversations then as well when the employee actually comes to you about domestic violence that they're experiencing? What to do when somebody comes to you to disclose it and how to handle it? What are your responsibilities, both when the requesting of the leave, how to handle a request for leave, how do the employees actually make that request for leave? And finally, we'll look at the supports and the resources when it comes to handling domestic violence leave in the workplace. I'm delighted to be joined today by Joyce Mulpeter, the Relationship Manager from the Irish Pharmacy Union, and Tara Kelly, Medicine's Information Pharmacist, also from the Irish Pharmacy Union. Both these ladies were key players in rolling out the Safe Pharmacy campaign in pharmacies throughout Ireland. The Safe Pharmacy campaign, you would have seen signs for this in your local pharmacy. This basically provides a safe place for those experiencing domestic abuse or coercive control to access domestic violence support services through the use of a safe phone and a safe place. And Joyce and Tara are going to give us an overview of the Safe Pharmacy service and how it was launched, how it works within the pharmacies, and then also give you an insight into what guidance they provided to some of the pharmacists in terms of that providing that support. And I think some of that guidance and support that they provided to pharmacies will transfer into support that we could give to managers as well, and similar advice will be applicable there. So we're delighted to have the ladies with us today, and we'll hear from them in a little while. So let's look first of all, if I may, at the legal position when it comes to handling domestic violence leave. I mentioned earlier, the Work-Life Balance and the Miscellaneous Provisions Act was introduced in April 2023. It's a type of statutory protected leave for either the employee or for a relevant person who's either experiencing or has experienced domestic violence in the past. So it entitles people, effectively it entitles employees to 5 days fully paid for domestic violence leave in a 12-month period. In addition to kind of the Work-Life Balance and Miscellaneous Provisions Act, it's important also to remember that the other legal areas that we might think about will be the duty of care under safety, health and welfare legislation. So there is a duty of care there to protect staff as far as reasonably possible from unsafe conditions in the workplace. So if you are aware that somebody was experiencing domestic violence, that could potentially fall under the duty of care, particularly where the employee raises concerns of safety at work. What do we define domestic violence as? The Act defines domestic violence as violence or a threat of violence, including sexual violence or acts of coercive control, committed against an employee or a relevant person. And that could be committed by someone who is either married to the employee, someone that they're living with, or someone who the relevant person is living with, somebody that they are in an intimate relationship with, or an adult child of the employee or the relevant person. So again, it's important to remember there that it's not just related to an employee who's experiencing or has experienced domestic violence. It also could be related to a relevant person. So let's have a look at what that relevant person would be. The relevant person, similar to the definitions we gave earlier, could be somebody who's either a spouse or a civil partner of the employee. They could be someone that they're living with. It could be someone that they're in an intimate relationship with. It could be a child of the employee who's not yet of full age, so a child who's under the age of 18, or it could be somebody who's financially depending on the employee. So all of these individuals could be deemed relevant persons for the purpose of domestic violence leave in the workplace. What the leave aims to do is to effectively give employees the time to support individuals when it comes to relocating or seeking medical attention, obtaining counselling, getting victim services or a court order, seeking legal assistance or assistance even from An Garda Síochána. So all of these things, taking the leave may enable the employee to avail of. The difference between this leave and any other type of leave, protected leave in the workplace, is that this leave is fully paid by the employer, whereas a lot of the other leave would not be and would be paid instead by the government. I suppose the reason for that would be because a lot of victims of domestic violence will be subject to surveillance over their finances, and so any variation in their wages and how they're being paid could potentially reveal to an abuser attempts to avail of domestic violence leave. So again, it's another attempt to protect the employee or the victim. For that reason as well, it's recommended that as an employer, when it comes to pay slips, that if you are providing domestic violence leave, you don't designate it as that and don't define it as that in the pay slip, and it comes up as something more anonymous. The government recommends, so in terms of how it's applied for, it doesn't have to be prior notice given. So similarly with force majeure leave, domestic violence leave can be applied for retrospectively. And so there's no evidence required as well in support of the leave, or there's no details that the employee has to give to you in relation to the domestic violence. So they can come to you after the fact to apply for this leave. What should you do as an employer? Under the legislation, the recommendations from the government are that you should first and foremost put in place a policy that details what are the steps that the employee and the employer needs to take when it comes to domestic violence leave and requesting it. It's essential that not only having the policy in place, but also that the policy is issued to all staff within the organisation. So whether that be in your handbook or whether it's issued specifically as a policy on its own, that's crucial when it comes to creating that awareness and that culture in the workplace that feels supportive to those employees. We do have a policy on the MSSHR hub, so if you don't have one at the moment and you need one, we do have access to that and we can provide that to you as at the outcome of today. What the guidance recommends as well, and what our policy would include, is a designated person. So it recommends designating a set of people other than the employee's line manager who are trained and available to employees as a point of contact for requests for domestic violence leave. When it comes to the legal risks, employees are protected. This is protected leave, as I mentioned, so they're protected from penalisation if they take domestic violence leave. So you cannot penalise somebody as a result of making a request for domestic violence leave, and also refusing or failing to provide them with that leave could result in a claim to the WRC with the potential for up to 20 weeks remuneration. So it's important to that just drives home that it's a legal requirement and that we must adhere to it and that we must cooperate with our policies. So let's now look at what are the signs of domestic violence leave you might look out for. If the employer is able to spot signs at an early stage, it can enable that employee to seek the right support and also get the right to help them to get out of that situation. So recognising the signs is crucial when it comes to supporting an affected employee. What can those signs look like? So there might be multiple signs that you could look out for. The first might be unexplained work absences or increased sick leave. You might have abnormal work patterns. There might be a decline in performance or missed targets, potentially increased errors where the employee would not normally have done that, and their performance is usually otherwise good. You may also notice the more obvious signs like physical and behavioural signs, so the likes of unexplained bruising or altered clothing to maybe hide an injury. You might look at then the more subtle things such as quietness or anxiety, or a fear that's there, or a level of aggression that doesn't normally be there, but it is starting to come to light. The employee might be distracted, or maybe is telling you that they're suffering from depression. These all could potentially be signs. Other signs might include they might be tired or irritable, or in some circumstances, somebody might resort to alcohol abuse, and so you might smell alcohol off the individual employee. So these are signs that potentially could indicate that the employee is a victim of domestic violence. But it's important to remember that, you know, we can't assume that just because those behaviours are there and just because those signs are being spotted, that they actually are victims of domestic violence. So we can't assume that to be the case, but we do need to keep an eye out and be mindful that they could be signals that domestic violence is happening. So what to do if you do notice the signs? If you notice signs of domestic violence or you're made aware of domestic violence, it goes without saying that the first most important thing to remember is that it has to be treated sensitively. The manager should take every precaution to ensure that the conversation is treated in a sensitive, a confidential and a non-judgmental manner. It should, what we would recommend is that you would schedule a one-to-one meeting with that employee, ensuring confidentiality at all times. If somebody is working remotely, what I would suggest is that you consider bringing them in for some sort of in-person meeting. Initiate the conversation then in a way that allows the employee to disclose their experience if they choose to do so. So remember, it remains the employee's prerogative if they want to actually tell you any of these details. We can't force that information from them, and they're not obliged to give us that information. What you might do is you might use open body language in this discussion. So being mindful, obviously, of the person's personal space, avoiding making the employee feel threatened in any way, using good eye contact, positive gestures, perhaps nodding along or uncrossing your arms. All of these are ways of using body language to create a safe and an open space for that employee. During that discussion, the manager should then flag to the individual what are the observed behaviours that they've noticed in the workplace. So I've noticed that you've been quieter than usual of late. I've noticed that your absence levels are quite high. I've noticed that you're working extra long hours in the evening, and this is something quite new. And really just flagging those behaviours to them in a very indirect, non-threatening manner, asking non-threatening questions that are what you're effectively doing is you're signalling your willingness to discuss the matter with them. And the aim is to ensure that the employee knows you're there to support them. And you might use wording such as, I just want you to know that this is a safe place to talk. So you might it's really just setting that tone so that if they wish to tell you about it, they can do so in that meeting. So where the employee is requesting the leave, as I said before, they don't need to actually submit a request to you before the leave. They can do that after the fact in some cases. And that has to be, if they're doing it, if they're requesting the leave, it should be in writing to you. So that could either be, you could have a form set up for that, or they could do it just by email or in writing to you. So we do need written confirmation that the leave is being requested, and they don't have to provide any supporting documentation, nor do they have to give details of the abuse, as I've mentioned before. We should be conscious of GDPR as well when it comes to this type of leave, because naturally the employee may be disclosing very sensitive details here in relation to either themselves or the relevant person. So it's very important that we treat any information we're given in accordance with our GDPR and our data protection policies, because failure to do that could leave us open to issues there as well. So when the employee discloses domestic violence, they might share details about the abuse, including work-related incidents. It's important that we also keep records of this work-related abuse or any domestic violence abuse we're made aware of, such as emails, phone records, could be support for services we've told them about, evidence of online abuse, witness statements from colleagues, and it's recommended that we would keep records of domestic violence leave for at least 3 years. If somebody discloses domestic violence, maybe during a discussion in relation to their performance, what we would suggest is that you do take that into account when it comes to, as a mitigating factor, when it comes to that particular performance issue and how to handle it with that individual. There's also the safety element of it. So I mentioned the duty of care before. If somebody's telling you that they feel unsafe at work because maybe the behaviour is coming into the workplace, or there's a risk of that happening, then what we would suggest that you do is that you have some sort of risk assessment carried out with the individual, where you would sit down with the employee and go through, okay, so you've made us aware of this. We now need to just put in place control measures, or check if there's any control measures or support that's needed in order to make sure that you're safe in the workplace. Remember at all times, and Joyce will touch on this later, you're not an expert in this area and you're not a specialist in this field. So it's very important that you maintain a kind of impartial stance in relation to this, and that you don't get too heavily involved in advising the employee on how to handle the domestic violence that they're experiencing. So it's important that we have those safety precautions there, that we don't get too involved into the kind of advisory element of it. Some of the safety measures that you might put in place could be, you might have regular check-ins with the staff member. You might put in place, you might send them to the occupational health where necessary. You might let them know, and one of the important things that you would be doing is providing them with support group details and networks that are available to them. And what we'll do as an outcome of this webinar today is we'll send you on, and Joyce has kindly sent us on some support details and contacts that you'll be able to add into your policy if you haven't already done so, and provide to these individuals if somebody was to disclose domestic violence, that the manager could then provide these support contacts to them. Obviously, if the employee was in immediate danger in certain circumstances, that you would be calling the Gardaí. But again, very much a case-by-case basis, and adhering to your policy and making sure not to go beyond your remit, your expertise as a manager when it comes to handling this. So hopefully that gives you an understanding of kind of the key considerations when handling domestic violence leave in the workplace. What I want to do now is hand over to Joyce. Before I do that, I might just check to see, are there any questions that anybody has? There is a Q&A section up the top, so feel free to pop any questions in there, and we'd be happy to answer them either today if we have the time, or absolutely we can have a chat with you after and get in touch. There's no problem. So there's none there at the moment, so we'll hand over to Joyce. Joyce, I'd love if you could take us through, for those of you who've just joined us, Joyce is from the Irish Pharmacy Union, and she was involved in setting up, along with Tara Kelly, the Safe Pharmacy Initiative, which we're going to have a chat with her about now. Joyce, how did the Safe Pharmacy Initiative start? Can you take us through what that involved and what it's
Absolutely.
all about?
And thanks for inviting us along today, Tara. We really appreciate it. So we were first approached in 2021 by the guards in Limerick, and they wanted us to be involved in a local initiative to help victims of domestic abuse. So we, of course, discussed it internally here, and we said, absolutely, this is something we need to be a part of. But what we felt was it couldn't be a local initiative, it would have to be national, because we couldn't offer service like that to just one part of the country. We felt it would have to be a whole nationwide service that we could offer. We also felt strongly, I mean, this is very much based on a health issue. So we felt that we needed to bring the HSE on board, and we invited them to join us, and they were thrilled and said, absolutely, this is very much something we want to be a part of. So myself, Tara, worked with the guards and the HSE for almost a year doing our research. And we invited then Safe Ireland to come on board. And back to what you were saying there a while ago, Tara, and this is a really important part, is that Safe Ireland, they're the experts. We are not experts in domestic abuse. And the reason we invited Safe Ireland to come on to guide us and to help us and to show us and to teach us was because they are the experts. And sadly, they deal with victims on a daily basis. The environment we were working in at the time was very extraordinary. It was during COVID, and for Rang Home, to us, the reason, one of the many reasons why we wanted to help was, at the time we were all being told to stay home and stay safe. And unfortunately, for many people in this country, home is not a safe place. And at the time, as we know, businesses were closed, doctor surgeries were closed, hospitals were closed, pharmacies were open. And pharmacies were open and pharmacists were available to the general public to help in any way they could. And we felt that we were best placed to help those victims in the community that may need to reach out for help. And therefore, you know, we did, and we set up our Safe Pharmacy campaign.
Brilliant. So it's a fantastic initiative, and I can see how during the COVID times, people would be in, anyone who was suffering from domestic violence would have been in a very intense situation at that time. And yes, the pharmacists would have been the go-to people, or the only people accessible at that time to anybody. So this is across Ireland at most pharmacies. And how does it work in practice, Tara? Can you give us an indication of what exactly, how does it work?
Yeah, sure. So if a person presents in the pharmacy looking to use the Safe Pharmacy service, the first thing we would do is offer to bring them into the consultation room within the pharmacy. So every pharmacy is required by law to have a private consultation room that's both audibly and visibly private. So we bring the person into the consultation room if they're happy to do that. And once we get in there, we just explain what it is we can offer as part of the Safe Pharmacy service. So we do explain, like you've touched on yourself, Tara, that anything that is disclosed in that room is confidential and won't be discussed, you know, outside of that room. Then we explain to them what we can offer, which is basically immediate access if they want it to either An Garda Síochána or the local support services in their area. So every pharmacy who signs up to the service, we send out to them a list of all of the domestic violence support services for men and for women in Ireland. And we also provide a large Safe Pharmacy poster for that consultation room. And we ask each pharmacy to write on that poster the number that's local to them. So, you know, the number is just there, it's ready to go. No one has to start scrambling on the phone trying to find the right number. Then we offer the person use of the phone if they wish to use the phone, and then they can use that phone either to contact An Garda Síochána if they wish, or their local domestic violence support service, or maybe they just want to call a family or friend who might be able to help. And then we offer them either use of the phone on their own, and we can leave the room, or we can stay in the room with them. We can make the call on their behalf either if they wish. It's very much down to the individual. And what we're finding in practice is a bit of both. Some people are happy to make the call on their own. Other pharmacies are making those calls for them. And in terms of the person presenting in the pharmacy, just to go back to that point, what we found over the last year or more is that these conversations are actually coming up very organically in the pharmacy. Once people are aware now that this service is available, and pharmacists or pharmacy staff are finding that they're kind of picking up on cues from people, and it's during those normal interactions that they're having with patients they've been dealing with for years. They just know something is off on a particular day or something is said, and you know, at that point then they're brought into the consultation room. Yeah.
So that's how it's been picked up more commonly lately, is that they're actually just picking up signals. And I can see how even in a workplace, it would be similar, wouldn't it? In that if you have managers who know their teams and they know their employees, what they're normally like, and if they start to spot kind of unusual behaviours, or somebody obviously physical signs or more subtle signs, you know, those are kind of red flags.
Emotional. Yeah, or somebody been a little bit emotional on a given day, you know, you just know when you're talking to them, something is just not quite right today. Yeah.
Very good. And it's about creating that. I mean, it makes a lot of sense just to create that safe space where they can make the phone call themselves. We give them the details. They can either choose to make that phone call if they wish, or, you know, potentially the pharmacist could ring on their behalf. And certainly as employers, we could also be flagging as one of the support contacts the local pharmacies for employees as well. You know, if they wanted to seek local advice, that might be one of the sources that we send them towards as well. And did you have, was there a lot of pharmacists that signed up to this? Is it, you know, was it difficult to get people to sign up to it?
Well, we've about 60% of pharmacists signed up to it at the moment. It's been active now for a year and a half. So that's quite a large amount of pharmacists to get over the line, because what we we don't just automatically assume every pharmacist is going to be a part of it. Each pharmacy has to take responsibility, and each pharmacy has to nominate a safe pharmacy champion who's going to take responsibility of making sure all staff in that pharmacy know what to do should a victim present. The worst thing in our eyes that could happen is that a victim would come into the pharmacy, ask in their own, using their own language, maybe asked to use a phone and to be told, sorry, we don't allow the public to use the phone here. So we need to know that all staff are trained and, you know, able to recognise signs that it could be somebody reaching out and looking for help. So we communicated this through our, I mean, as I said, we put a lot of time and work into this before the actual launch. We had a lot of pharmacies already signed up and ready to go on the 1st of July 2022. And we did that through a series of webinars that we had done ourselves. We did some articles. We have a magazine that goes out to all our pharmacies across the country. It goes out to 2,500 readers, and it includes politicians, and it includes other stakeholders, say in the Department of Health also. And like we have, you know, there's 1,850 pharmacies in the country that we have to communicate with on a regular basis. If you just think of our, you know, normal everyday work that we do in pharmacy, there's always updates, there's always news, there's always something happening. So we actually send a weekly newsletter to every pharmacy in the country. So we had our Safe Pharmacy launch, the whole campaign. We ran that for a few weeks prior to launch, and we got a great response. And you know, it actually was amazing to see. I mean, even when you think about brands, Tara, you know yourself, when if you're one brand, you don't want to be seen in bed with another brand. But if you think about the different pharmacies across the board, be it Boots, Lloyd's, Macaulay's, McCabe's, it didn't matter. They all said the same thing. This is not about our brand. This is about getting a message to the victim. And they all fully supported using the show material, I suppose, for want of a better word, that we came up with. So I don't know if you can see on camera, we created little lapel pins for the staff to wear in pharmacy. And we created some show material for the windows. And for the, as Tara explained, we have posters for the consultation room where they write their local numbers and they have it there handy to hand. And so,
Great.
yeah, so I mean, that's how we kind of encourage pharmacists, but we didn't really have, it's not a difficult subject to support, you know, it's not a difficult campaign to support, because, you know,
there was that buy-in there already, kind of.
Sorry?
There was the buy-in there already. People
Absolutely.
understood how important it is, don't they? Yeah,
Yeah.
that general, it's universally kind of acknowledged that it's a serious issue.
And I think a lot of
yeah.
pharmacies said that, you know, it's the kind of thing they would have helped people with anyway. That's the kind of place that community pharmacy is, you know, but having the structures in place and having the training in place and having, you know, just even the fact that the service had a name now, I think pharmacists felt, they described back to us that it empowered them a bit more to know what to do and to know that they weren't crossing the line, and you know that there was a role for them to play here in signposting people on to where they needed to go. Yeah.
Yeah, great, Tara. And I think, yeah, the signposting is crucial, isn't it? Because I think one of the key roles of a manager, of a pharmacist in this initiative as well, is you're effectively signposting. It's the same when it comes to, say, bullying matters in the workplace. You have contact persons who are there to signpost what the policies are and what the options are to them. And effectively, as I see it, that will be the manager's remit here as well, in terms of your signposting for that individual. You're giving them a confidential space to disclose it if they wish. You're giving them the time off to avail of services if they wish. And just in terms of the point I made earlier about, you know, and you've just touched on it there, Tara, you know, having some sort of structure to work within and knowing not to go too far. How important is that, not to go too far into it, or is there a limit, or what's your
well, we were very
advice?
clear that, you know, the pharmacists or the pharmacy staff were not to get involved in you know, counselling the person or telling them what to do or advising them, you know, to get this or to get that, or, you know, how to get themselves out of the situation, because we're not the experts, and there are plenty of experts out there in all of these support services across the country. So, you know, we really do not want people providing advice that they're not qualified to give. So it's it's listening impartially, it's providing a confidential, safe space, and then it's the signposting on. And some pharmacies have said to us people didn't want to make a phone call that day, but they did take down the number. And they did feel that the person, you know, may come back to the pharmacy in the future. That's, you know, for some people, it's the first stepping stone. So no, we definitely don't want people providing advice that they're not even comfortable giving. We're not qualified to do it, and it could be the wrong advice.
Yeah, I know as well, Joyce, I know you've mentioned before that, and as you said, Tara, it could be the wrong advice in that, and if you tell somebody not to go home to somebody who's abusing them, that could actually be the worst thing for them rather than actually helping their situation. So although we might have the best interests at heart, we need to be very cautious of having those limits. And again, we're there to kind of signpost from an employer and a policy point of view. I'm just going to look, there's a couple of questions there, just thank you so much. So I've one in here which is from Anne. We have domestic violence leave request form. When is the best time to request the employee to fill it out? So what I'd say, Anne, is as soon as you've been made aware of it. So once, it's the same as kind of force majeure leave. Once you've been made aware that somebody has availed of the leave, you would be issuing that form straight away. Or for companies that don't have a form, you would be getting them to submit that request in writing to you as soon as you're made aware of it. I know Erica there has also asked, is there documentation that we can share with employees to raise awareness of this initiative? I'm sure that there are government materials available online, and what we'll do as an outcome of today is we'll source anything that we can for you in terms of materials that you might, like Joyce mentioned, put posters up, things like that could be beneficial in the workplace to really just create that culture and that sense that we take it seriously and that, you know, we the support is there. So I'll have a look at that, Erica, and if any materials like that, anything useful that we feel that we can send on, we'll absolutely share with you as an outcome of the webinar. Okay, ladies, thank you so much for your time today. It's been really eye-opening and really
Can I
useful.
just add one thing in there, Tara? Just if people are looking for information, what we found when we worked with Safe Ireland, well, we worked very closely with them, and we ended up creating a whole online training course for our, you know, our 13,500 staff across pharmacy. But they're actually really, really, really helpful at giving advice. And as I said, the list that I sent Tara will give all the local agencies around the country. And if anybody watching the webinar today is looking for information or guidance or help, like this is a very emotive subject, and it's something that we need to talk about more, I feel. But the agencies that come in under Safe Ireland, be it Women's Aid or be it, you know, Haven in Limerick or, you know, the Little Shepherd in Cork, they go by different names locally. But those agencies want to work with local businesses, local communities, local towns and villages to eradicate this problem. So I would encourage anyone to reach out to them. They're super helpful and they want to give guidance and help on this area.
Brilliant, yeah, absolutely. And it's such a fantastic initiative. So well done to both of you and to everybody at the Irish Pharmacy Union and Safe Ireland on the work that you do. Thank you very much for your time today, and thank you to everyone who's joined us for our webinar this session. If you have any questions arising from today, please do feel free to email us after the session. We'd be happy to have a chat with you or to pop you an email with any answers that you need. As I said, we'll send you on any materials and support services that might be of benefit to you. But in the meantime, thank you so much for your time, and until the next time, thanks a million.
Thanks, Tara.
Thanks, Joyce, and thanks, Tara.